Hello and welcome to the Small Talk series brought to you by the Baggery Foundation. Today we're welcoming Satish Kumar and David Murphy, who'll be talking about music, society and where they differ and connect depending on whether they're from an Eastern or a Western tradition. David Murphy is a musician and composer who's breathing new life into the Western classical tradition with his collaborations with Ravi Shankar, Anushka Shankar and the Royal Opera House. Indeed, his next opera will be receiving its world premiere in 2017. Satish Kumar is a peace and environment activist and also a former monk. He's also editor-in-chief of Resurgence magazine, discussing social issues. As he and David begin their talk, let's hear what they have to tell us.
In researching for this interview, I'd already known of your reputation, of course, but I delved into your life in more detail, and it's just so fascinating to hear about the journey that you've been on.
Yes.
This amazing journey from your childhood in India, the Peace March to Paris, to London, to Moscow, and the United States. And then the journey to the UK in 1973, I believe you settled in Hartland in Devon.
Yes.
And founded the small school. The Schumacher College, another wonderful institution in Dartington.
That's right.
Which you founded, I believe, in 1990.
Yeah.
And then all the amazing campaigning that you've done in your life, and the wonderful documentary for the BBC, Earth Pilgrim.
That's right.
All these fascinating threads of an amazing life so far, and an amazing life, to going into the future. It'd be wonderful to discuss with you this morning.
Yeah, pleasure to have this conversation with you. Yeah, David.
But what I'd love to talk about, maybe we could begin with your childhood, actually, because
Yes.
I think it'd be fascinating for people watching this interview to learn a little bit about. I mean, for us in the West, the idea of becoming a monk at the age of 8 is mind-blowing. I mean, how does that come about?
I was born in a Jain family, and Jain tradition is very ancient tradition, like Buddhist tradition. It goes back to 2,600 years. And when I was 4 years old, my father passed away. And I have a very vivid memory of him lying in state. And whole family very sad and crying, and my mother crying and taking all her jewelry off. And so I became very sort of saddened to see all this thing, even at age 4. And so I asked my mother, why father is not talking to me? Why is he not walking? What happened to him? And why are you crying? Why are you taking all this jewelry off your body? And she said, your father is dead, and he will never speak to you again, and we will never see him again. So that was a very shocking event at such a tender age of 4. And so I became interested even at that early age. And in India we believe that although in body, this particular body, you are 4 years old,
Yes.
but you carry an old soul. So what we call samskaras, the continuation from previous life. So there must have been some connection that I became very deeply interested in this question of death and asking, is there a way when we can stop death? And so I asked these questions to our Jain monks because my mother was a very great follower of Jain tradition. And so she will always and often go to the monks to talk to them, to listen to them, to their sermons, to their teachings. And so when I go with her, I asked these monks. And these monks said, the only way to be free of the cycle of birth and death is to renounce the world and take up the monkhood. So that was a kind of in simple and a kind of succinct way I can put this, that the only way one can be free of the cycle of birth and death is to become a monk. So I, at age 9, actually, decided to give up the world, forsake the world, renounce the world, and join the wandering order of Jain monks.
And how did your mother feel about that? Was she supportive of this?
She had some mixed feelings.
Yeah.
She had two minds. One is that such a small boy of 9 taking up such a big decision for whole life,
Sure.
commitment for whole life. So she was a little bit worried, naturally, as a mother. But also she felt that if a person is trying to follow a spiritual path, then one should not be an obstacle. Because if you be an obstacle, according to Jain sort of teachings and thinking, you are, in a way, stopping somebody on a spiritual quest.
Sure.
And that's not good for you and not good for the child. And how do you know the child is not capable of making such a big decision in life? Because for my mother, and for Jains as well, because they have this tradition that you can become a monk at age 9.
Right.
So they consider that a child is not an underdeveloped adult. Child is capable of making decision what is appropriate at that time based on the child's feelings and intuition and inspiration. And so my mother had that feeling as well. So she said, I will not be an obstacle to your quest for spiritual life and a life which brings an end to the cycle of birth and death. So she gave me blessing as well as her reluctance in her heart. But she held back that reluctance and allowed me to become a monk. But my mother was much more nature-oriented. She would say, nature is our great teacher. We must learn from nature. And when she went to the field, the small holding, the land, we will walk. We will walk to the field and I'll walk with her. She will hold my hand and we will walk, and then while we are walking she will tell me stories, but she will also teach me about nature.
Right.
She will show me, because we in our Rajasthan had on the trees wild bees, the wild honey. And so she will point me out, there's a kind of beehive on the tree, look at that.
Yeah.
And then she will say that, look how wonderful bees are. They are our teachers. They go from flower to flower, never harming anyone. Never a flower has complained
Exactly.
that honeybee took too much nectar away. And then when they have taken the little nectar from the flower, what do? They transform that nectar into sweet, delicious, healthy, healing honey. What a wonderful
Yes.
lesson of transformation.
Yes.
And what the humans do, we do mining, and we mine until it's exhausted. And we take from nature, we cut down the forest, we destroy our natural world, and until it's destroyed, we have no understanding or notion of restraint. But honeybees naturally have a kind of restraint. That's how she interpreted
Yes, absolutely.
the
Wonderful
bees.
lesson.
And then she will say, look, not only they take nectar and make beautiful, delicious, sweet honey, but also they pollinate. So they are networkers. They bring nature together and life together. So that kind of pollination, we humans should learn from nature. Nature is our teacher. Sometimes she would say, nature is even greater teacher than many of our great teachers, such as the Buddha. And the tree is the tree of knowledge, the tree of wisdom, the tree of life. So tree, such a wonderful, generous tree. When you have a mango tree, mangoes are there for anyone. The tree never discriminates between rich or poor, between black or white, between educated or educated. You go to a tree never asks you, have you come with your wallet?
Yes.
Have you come with your Visa card?
I'm fascinated to hear also about your childhood as a monk. What was a typical day like for you?
As a monk, we would wake up and get up at 4 a.m. because that time is the most sacred
Yes.
and most peaceful and most pristine, most pure moment of the day, beginning of the day. So we'll wake up at 4 a.m. and then we will have our meditation. So for about 2 hours, we have chanting, we have certain mantras, and what we call in Jain tradition pratikraman, which means returning to your source, coming back to yourself, and purifying your soul, your spirit. So that is a kind of meditation I learned and practiced for 9 years, from 4 to 6 a.m. And then after sunrise, we will go for some water, and then we'll come. There was no breakfast for monks, and so then that is the time for study.
I see.
So I will have study from I would say 7, 8 a.m. to 10, 11 a.m. And I learned many Sanskrit texts and the Jain texts in our ancient language. Like the Buddhist texts are in Pali,
right,
and the Jain texts are in Prakrit. So Prakrit means like the word Prakriti, which means nature. So the natural tongue, the folk tongue, or the mother tongue. So people spoke in those days, at the time of the teachings of Mahavira, in Prakrit language. Right. So our texts of Jain tradition are in Prakrit. So I learned those texts, the sutras, the ancient sacred texts. So I will learn by heart. So during my 9-year Jain life, I learned about 10,000 verses of ancient sacred texts by heart. So I will learn more in the morning and then recite them again in the evening. And so that was the main thing. But also I learned literary texts in Sanskrit mainly, and also I learned grammar of Sanskrit. So my main study was study of Sanskrit language and Prakrit language, and through Sanskrit and Prakrit, the ancient sacred texts, starting from the Jain tradition, but I also learned some Buddhist texts.
It's amazing to hear, because here we are in the West, such a contrast, no material goods at all, this intense connection with nature, even learning all of those texts by heart. Nowadays, obviously, people will go on the internet and look these things up, but you have this intimate connection in your whole, in your soul with these texts because you learn them.
My guru would say that, in Hindi will say, Dam Anta Gyan Kantha, which means money in your pocket and knowledge in your heart. Knowledge in books, knowledge in computers, knowledge in the library is okay, but it's not under your command.
Yes.
But when you have knowledge in your command and you learn Bhagavad Gita or Sanskrit text or Upanishads or Jain texts, and you learn by heart and you remember by heart, they're always with you. And anytime you can practice what you have learned. So knowledge is more than information. Information is in the books. Information is in the computer. But knowledge is in your heart,
your whole being.
Your whole being.
Yes.
And knowledge comes, deep and profound knowledge comes when you do it, when you practice it. Knowing by mind or by your brain is still a kind of refined information, but still information, because you have no experience of it. But when you have put your knowledge into practice, then you have really understood what you have learned. And that understanding gives you the wisdom.
So I'm just thinking on a physical level, if you've learnt these texts by heart and you can, presumably you would sing them actually as well as recite them, which is a beautiful.
Recite them,
There's a physical change happening in your body, isn't there? Because in your brain, the brain is organising itself. The wiring in the brain is organising itself in accordance with these texts that you've repeated so many times. So actual physical changes are happening.
Absolutely. And when you are doing that physical change, and of course, physical and spiritual are integral to each other, because when you bring spiritual into physical, then physical becomes alive. Body comes to life, and so the meaning is in the spiritual.
I'm also fascinated, after this period as a monk, I read you came in contact with the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi.
Yes. Mahatma Gandhi updated, brought the Jain principles of non-violence into more social, political, economic and cultural sphere of life, society,
yes.
rather than the more traditional Jain view of practicing non-violence in your personal life.
Yes.
And so Mahatma Gandhi said, and that inspired me to give up the monastic order and join the Gandhian movement, because Mahatma Gandhi said that the spirituality, non-violence, truth, these principles are not only for select few who are able to give up the world
Yes.
and become monks and live on monastic order. Truth, non-violence, spirituality, compassion, generosity, these are the principles for everyday life.
Yes.
And for every human being. So we must not divide the society into monks and non-monks. So spirituality only for the saints. Perfect spirituality.
Yeah.
And we humans living in the society, we can't practice spirituality. So we go to the temple and worship and honor our monks and then leave it there and
Yes.
then go in the world and life as usual.
Yeah.
Mahatma Gandhi said we must change our way of life and do politics in a spiritual and truthful manner, do economics in a kind of spiritual and compassionate manner, do agriculture in our compassionate and non-violent manner. So non-violence, truth, generosity, compassion, spirituality, a sense of service, these are the eternal values for everyday life.
That's a huge question, isn't it? How we get these spiritual values, the spiritual values that you grew up with. How do we get them to permeate the world, the Western world particularly, with all its separateness, all the machines, all the computing, all the isolation from nature, people in their own little boxes, living in a road, not really speaking to their neighbours because you don't do that.
Yes.
All these things. I mean, there are huge changes that we need to
The
make.
change can come if we create a dialogue in our society, a living dialogue, a living conversation, that what is important for human life. At the moment, the prevailing and dominant kind of notion in the society is the economy
Yes.
is at the top.
Yes.
And economic growth must be obtained and achieved at all costs. And all other things must follow. They will fall in place if the economic growth is there. That obsession with economic growth needs to be reconsidered.
I think it's a kind of insanity, actually.
Insanity,
that we as a race have.
Yeah.
And as you've pointed out, the word eco is contained in economic.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think most economists have never given much thought to,
exactly.
if any thought at all.
Exactly. I was, not long ago, only last year, invited to LSE, London School of Economics. And in my talk, I said to them that you are studying economy and not ecology.
Yeah.
Now, economy and ecology are two sides of the same coin, because the word comes from the Greek root, which ekos means home,
Yes.
and logos means knowledge, and nomos means management. So ecology means knowledge of the planet home. Economy means management of the planet home. Before you can manage something, you have to know what you are managing.
Yes.
How can you manage your home if you don't know what is your home, where is your home, what is everything in the home? So ecology and economy should be studied together.
Absolutely.
And when you study together, then you will be able to take care of your home and manage it properly. So I even suggested that the London School of Economics should change its name and should call it LSEE,
Yes.
London School of Ecology and Economics. And so Mahatma Gandhi's kind of message to the world was, and still relevant and still important, is that economy has a place, but it must be kept in its place. And it should be within the context of ecology, spirituality, all those other values. Then economy is nothing wrong. Economy, we need economy. We need money, but money should be in the service of human well-being,
Exactly.
and not humanity and human beings become the servants of money. That's the difference.
It feels to me sometimes like people have got so obsessed with money and the power of money that they are unable to see the big picture,
Yeah.
which includes, of course, planet Earth,
Yeah.
you know, as you say, our home.
Yeah.
And if you don't include this in your economic theories, then,
Yeah.
then they're pointless theories,
Exactly.
because the whole foundation is missing.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
So, and I think until economics as a discipline expands to include the planet,
Yeah.
well, that will make a huge change when
That's
that
right,
happens.
that's
And
right, that's
I'm sure through your work that,
Yeah, yeah.
especially talking at the
I
NSC,
mean,
they
I
will-
am editing a magazine
Yes.
called Resurgence
Yes.
and the Ecologist. Now, and this Resurgence has been around for 50 years. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary. And in the magazine, Resurgence and Ecologist, now together,
Yes.
combined, we are trying to renew and revive this holistic understanding that we are integral part of the planet Earth. And Earth and natural resources are not simply resources for the economy.
Yes.
Nature is a source of life rather than resource for the economy. And so, and I have been editing Resurgence for the last 42 years.
In fact, you're the longest serving editor of any British publication, I
That's
believe.
right,
Yes.
that's right. And so I would like to see this conversation about what is the purpose of life, what is the meaning of life, and how we can have well-being and a happy society, and how economic growth and economic innovation can help that. And there's a limit. I mean, there's a limit beyond which we don't need economic growth.
Sure.
So rather than economic growth as a linear growth, I would like to see economy being a cyclical process. So you take from nature with gratitude, use it, and then put something back into nature. So a cyclical economy is more durable economy and a sustainable economy. Linear economy, you go, but where do you end?
And in disaster.
And in disaster.
Yes.
So you create global warming,
Yeah.
you create climate change, you get resources depleting, rainforests are disappearing, the oceans are being polluted and overfished, and the plastic thrown into and rubbish thrown into oceans. The land is being poisoned with chemicals, fertilizers, herbicide, pesticide, because we want more growth. Whereas what Mahatma Gandhi said, that the human nature relationship is very essential for human well-being. And at the moment, human beings are being disconnected and separated from nature.
It's so important, I think, for the West to learn from these values of India.
Yeah.
And particularly now there's a danger that I've been to India many times in the last 20 years and seen the changes. Many changes are very good, of course,
Yeah.
but many people have come out of poverty. But these Western ideals seem to be
Yeah.
all over the place
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And there's a danger that those ancient philosophical truths,
Yeah.
you know, the connectedness of everything,
Yes. Yeah.
the kind of amazing childhood that you had
Yeah.
will become more and more unusual, and people
Yes.
could lose this wisdom.
Yes.
So, I think what you're doing at the small school, for example, is wonderful, because that's a practical example, isn't it,
Yeah.
to these young people
Yes.
of
Yes.
connectedness
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
nature and showing.
Yeah, well, what we are doing at the small school has a kind of Indian and a kind of Gandhian flavor, implicitly, not so explicitly, because at the small school, what we do, we say to our children that you are here, learn not only 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, but also 3 H's. And 3 H's are head, heart, and hands. So we want you to learn to think, analyze, appreciate through your head, but also feel. Feeling comes from your heart. And it is heart where your courage, because courage, and the heart are connected.
Yes, yes.
And it is the heart where your imagination and your spirituality, compassion, feelings of love, of sense of service, sense of generosity come from the heart. If we don't develop our heart, we don't give some time to understand these values of the heart, then you will not be developing your full personality.
Yes.
And then we say that once you have thought, once you have feelings, then you have to manifest your imagination and your creativity through your hands. So you must learn to make something. You are not just merely a consumer, you are a maker. You are a creator. You are a creative being. So use your hands to make arts, crafts, painting, pottery, beautiful wood furniture, building a beautiful house, whatever you can, or even beautiful cooking, or beautiful work that you can do with your hands. This kind of transformative experience you can do when you use your hands. So don't think that robots should do everything or machines should do everything and my hands are only for a computer keyboard.
Yes.
Your hands are much more powerful and have a much greater potential than just use for a keyboard.
Exactly.
And so use your hand. So head, heart and hands. And this was in a way implicit in Mahatma Gandhi's model of education. And this is what I started in North Devon, in Heartland, where I live. And then I also started the same model of education for the adults in Devon again,
Yes.
in South Devon near Dartington, at Dartington actually, called Schumacher College.
Yes.
And there too, we say all our students, you are learning science, you are learning economics, you are learning ecological design, all those things, but they must our students must experience and practice. So we do gardening, we do cooking, we do cleaning, do arts, we do crafts. So education should be more complete and more holistic and more comprehensive and more kind of inclusive of all these skills and not de-skilling. Because at the moment our university students come out of the university, quite often they have no other skills than just computer skills.
Exactly.
But I want our students to come out of university, like Schumacher College, and be able to stand on their own feet and be able to look after themselves and repair, build, make, and think, and feel, and write books, and speak, and communicate. All these skills should be
Yes.
developed. This is what I have started at Schumacher College.
Wonderful. One can imagine in an ideal world they'd have a garden at the Houses of Parliament where they would grow their vegetables and they would take a couple of hours each day to tend the garden and cook their lunch.
That would be
and
wonderful. I think Prime Minister question time should be turned into gardening
Yes,
time.
gardener's question time.
Gardener's question time and gardening time, so that setting good example
Yeah.
is a very important way. And our MPs, our business leaders, our political leaders need to set those good examples for the nation so that we are not, Parliament is not merely a talking shop. It's doing something good for the country.
I remember a few years ago David Cameron did mention the instead of GDP, gross happiness instead. Unfortunately, that seems to have been forgotten now. But
Yes, I mean, David Cameron had some very good ideas. His idea of big society had a potential
Absolutely.
to have something good in it. And also he said we must measure not only our economic growth, but also well-being. And that was a very good idea. But he had become sort of distracted
Yes.
in a kind of more economic growth and more kind of, I would call less profound questions and more superficial questions. But one country which is seriously and sincerely pursuing the path of gross natural happiness is Bhutan.
right,
Bhutan, the fourth king of Bhutan, once was asked, what is the GNP, gross national product of Bhutan? And his answer was that I'm not so interested in GNP of Bhutan, I'm interested in GNH of Bhutan. G and H is gross national happiness.
Yes.
And so that became part of constitution and
Wow.
and the politicians and the government leaders and also business leaders in Bhutan are trying to bring wellness and happiness in society as the goal of society and not just economic growth. And that's a good example. A small country,
Yes.
but sandwiched between China and India, the two huge countries, has this wonderful new idea. So I hope that India and China and the Western world can take from this small country, Bhutan, this idea of gross national happiness and see that economics as if people matter. what E.F. Schumacher said.
Exactly.
Economics as a planet matter. Then economics is a good thing.
It's interesting. It's the same kind of idea that symbolically we're trying to do with the opera that I'm completing on behalf of Ravi Shankar, because it's bringing the music and the wisdom of India together with the instruments and concepts of Western classical music.
That's wonderful.
So it's the marriage.
You are doing that marriage together.
We're trying to
Tell
do that,
me
yes.
how it will happen. What is your vision for bringing these two together?
It's interesting because humanity originally, we're told, came out of Africa, one family that spread throughout the world.
Yeah.
And Ravi Shankar and I had many discussions about this, and they would have taken our ancestors, their music, with them to all parts of the world.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, that music comes from the same roots.
Yes.
It's a way of using sound.
Yeah.
Different ways of using sound, perhaps, as the traditions have diverged.
Yeah.
But the fundamental use of sound, like you use clay or to make a pot, is the same.
Yeah.
And if you go to the nuts and bolts of sound, which is the harmonic series, the way sound is constructed, then actually you can unite the music of India and the West very effectively on a very deep level. So this is what we're trying to do.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I would love you to write about this project something for researchers.
Yeah, great pleasure.
That'd be wonderful to bring East and West together through music. And in a way, Ravi Shankar was very keen to have this unity of East and West.
Yes.
And he worked with many, many Western musicians, such as Yehudi Menuhin and the Beatles and so on. And so we must carry that inspiration and vision of Pandit Ravi Shankar into the future and bring East and West together. Because now we are a small planet Earth.
Exactly.
And through, thanks to technology and mobile phones and internet and so on, we have come much closer. And if we can bring music and spirituality into the play, then I think we can make a true, meaningful one world. Because all these divisions, like, so I'm an Indian, you are English, I am Chinese, you are Russian, I am black, you are white, I am Hindu, you are Muslim, I am a Christian, you are Jew, I'm a capitalist, you are communist. All these divisions should not be dividing. These divisions should be seen as diversity.
Celebration of diversity.
Celebration of diversity. And diversity should be embraced and not condemned. So at the moment we want to create uniformity or division.
Yes.
I want to move away from division to diversity and from uniformity to unity. So unity and diversity are not in conflict. They play together, they dance together.
Yes.
Whereas division and uniformity, they are divisive and they are problem. And therefore, East and West coming together means that we are envisioning and creating unity of life. And at the same time, we are celebrating the diverse traditions of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because what we're trying to do is bring the musics together in a way that doesn't pollute either of them. In fact, they enhance each other because you go down to the fundamental roots of both. And one is then enabled to see each music in a new light, but see it for what it is and see that fundamental connection.
I congratulate you for your project.
Thank you.
And I wish you great success in this
Thank you very
project.
much.
And it's a wonderful meeting you and talking to you today.
A great pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.